number 6 or 7. Recording in progress. Winter webinar number 6 or 7, I think. So we've had people from all around the world coming to share their thoughts, their advice, their stories with us. And we've now got someone who's very local to us. We're super lucky to have him jumping at Langar all the time because he is a multiple-time medalist and a 8-way national champion. So Matt Cumming, I will hand over to you.
Cool. Thanks, Laura. So I'm Matt Cumming. I'm going to talk to you this evening about competing in skydiving. I'm going to start out with a couple of pictures. Both of these were firsts for me. The picture on the left was taken just after my first ever skydive at Skydive Strathallan back in 2010. It was a static line jump with the University of Strathclyde Skydiving Club. The picture on the right was taken in 2022 at my first ever World Championships at Skydive Arizona, leaving the Twin Otter with the British 8-way team. And I'm basically going to talk tonight about my journey from one to the other, how you could do the same, and generally about the benefits of competition skydiving. I think when we do our first jump, a lot of us do it maybe as a bucket list item or just for the excitement, for the thrill. We don't necessarily realise that it's a sport that we can continue to do. And then further down the line as well, we realize actually it's a sport that we can get good at. There's a concept of being good at skydiving or better at skydiving. We might realize this by how many jumps it takes us to get our A license or our formation skydiving stickers. And then once we realize we can get better at it, we realize we can compete in it too. And that can be quite exciting. I certainly wasn't a natural. It took me 37 jumps to get my A license, and I got my FS1 in jump number 119. I was having a lot of fun, but I wasn't necessarily being very productive with my jumps when I first started out. Going to talk a little bit about 4-way skydiving. So I first got into 4-way skydiving at Come and Try weekend at Langar. It was run by one of the sponsored teams, Formula, at the time. And that was my first introduction really to the concept that 4-way skydiving existed and that it was something that we could do and compete in and that it was loads of fun. And for anyone that doesn't know, in 4-way skydiving, there's actually 5 people in the team, as you can see in the picture here. You've got 4 competitors, 4 formation flyers who work their way through a set of shapes in every round. And there's a camera flyer who follows them out and videos that. And the first 35 seconds worth of formations that they build gets them a point each. And the most points at the end of the competition, which is usually maybe 10 rounds, is the overall winner. Stuck on my slide. So competitions, different competitions that you can do. In the UK, we've got the UK Skydiving League and our nationals in 4-way. These are great competitions. They're all around the country. There's usually one up north, one in the Midlands, and one down south. And then nationals is usually at Skydive Hibblestow. And the really good thing about these competitions where you can turn up with your teams and compete is that there's different categories. You can compete in rookie, single A, double A, or triple A. And basically, the beginner categories have some of the easier formations. And as you learn and progress, they add in the more challenging formations. And each skydive that you do has more of the formations in it as well. So it's a bit more mentally challenging, as well as having some of the harder moves. And the really good thing about this is you just enter the category suitable for your ability. And that means no matter where you're at in your skydiving career, you can have a really good, fun competition against your peers without having to worry about challenging people that have been training for a lot longer than you have. There's also the European Skydiving League, which is a fun European competition where you can turn up and compete again in any of the categories. And then at the top level, we've got the World Cup and the World Championships, which are both every other year. The World Cup, you can send 4 teams to per country. And the World Championships, we send 1 team to, and the winner of that is the overall world champion. So that's kind of the range of competitions we've got in formation skydiving. So you might be wondering if you're good enough to start a team. If you've not done any competition before and you're not sure, the answer is almost certainly yes. So this is my first ever team here. As you can see from our scores, in our first competition, we got 1 point in the whole competition. And I didn't get it until round 6. So we'd mostly all just got our FS1, which is the British sticker that lets you jump with other people, lets you do 4-way. So if you've got that sticker, you're basically ready to start competing, to do the UK Skydiving League competitions, and you can have loads of fun. It's not shown in the scoreboard here, but with every round we were improving, and jumping with the same people each time is a great way to improve. And by that last round, we got our first point. But our next competition, we actually scored 1 point in every round. And the competition after that, we'd got up to an average of 6 points per round. By the end of that same season, we went to the European Skydiving League competition, in the category above in single A, and we actually managed to win that competition with a 10 average, which was really good fun and quite a big step up from just getting that 1 point in our first competition. To do that, we'd done about 2 hours of tunnel in the rookie category and about 4 hours of tunnel training when we were learning single A and learning all of those moves. And it might seem like quite a lot, but if you're doing four-way, you can split the cost of that tunnel between your teammates. So actually 4 hours of tunnel to learn single A and win this European competition cost the same as maybe going and doing an hour of one-on-one to learn a bit of free flying in the tunnel. So I think it was very much worth it. So a little bit more about my journey. After having done those years, we did quite a lot more training to step up to double A. We did about 10 hours of tunnel and 100 jumps in 2017 to get about 12 average in double A. And then next year we did another 100 jumps, another 10 hours of tunnel, and that was enough to get us up to triple A in 2018 and finish high enough to qualify for the next year's World Cup. So just from getting 1 point in a rookie competition in 2016, 2 years later at Nationals, we finished high enough that we qualified for the 2019 World Cup. So it's maybe not quite as far away as some of you would think in terms of how much is involved to get to competing for your country. That next year, we trained for the World Cup, and also I joined the British 8-way team. So I was lucky that I was invited to join the 8-way team. They'd lost 4 people, so they were rebuilding, and their plan was to try and win Nationals in 2019 to qualify for the World Championships in 2020, which we were successful in. Unfortunately, due to COVID, what would have been Russia 2020 was postponed to 2021 and then cancelled altogether for the British team. But we were lucky enough to win Nationals again in 2021, qualifying us for the 2022 World Championships in Arizona, which was then my first World Champs. So if anyone has questions about their own specific training programs later and they want to ask me about it, I'm very happy to help people come up with training programs to help you get to where you want to be with your competitions. A lot of people ask me about the differences between 4-way and 8-way. 4-way is a lot more accessible. If you've just got your FS1, you can have a go at 4-way and you can kind of do all right. Whereas 8-way is quite difficult, especially the exits, getting 8 people off the plane, as you can see in the picture on the right there. It's a really big, long exit. It requires lots of people to get a lot of things correct. But when it works, it's really satisfying. In 4-way, we tend to launch different exits in each round. We don't have to, but we can launch that first point. In 8-way, we tend to launch what we call the chunk, which is shown here. Although at the very high end, so the top world-class teams do have 2 or 3 different exits that they will use in competition as well. The French particularly experiment with launching all the first points of 8-way competitions and found that while it was possible, it wasn't necessarily productive because they weren't very stable formations. Other things with 8-way, it can be a lot harder to run an 8-way team purely from the admin of it. You need to get your calendar sorted out nice and early. With 9 people in the team, you've got about 36 grandparents who might have birthdays or invite you to come away to things. You have to be very organized, and quite a lot of the decisions have to really be made by a team captain who can lead things. 4-way is a bit more of a democracy. 8-way tends to work well with a bit of a benign dictatorship. The actual technical side of things, 4-way can feel a lot faster, more powerful. It's got a different variety of exits. So I think it is a bit of preference as to which you prefer. I would say 8-way is a bit harder, especially to first get started at. Talking of exits, so this is one of our Puma's exits that we used to do. We weren't very good at exits when we first started. We'd done, like we said, some training in the tunnel. And the tunnel, while it was really good for the rest of the skydive, wasn't necessarily helping us with our exits. As a general thing, I would say to teams who are starting out, you don't need to be able to launch all the first point of every skydive to have high scores. So we scored a 14 or 15 average in AAA 4-way with just 2 different exits. I think we're launching an H and an M for the whole competition, and that can get us a 15 average in AAA. So if you're looking at learning in rookie, single A and double A, don't fall into the trap of thinking you need to launch all the different exits to be able to do well in the competitions. Your couple of exits that you've got actually get so good that you can move on to the second point much faster than even if you successfully launch one of the more difficult formations. Certainly at the top end of AAA, you need to start to be able to launch all the exits to be really competitive. But I think for the vast majority of teams, having a couple of good, strong exits is definitely fine. I'll talk a little bit now about coaching at Langar. I've got a nice picture here of Phil Curtis. He was very helpful of our with our team as we were progressing, but he's just one example of many people at Langar that are very willing to help out and coach teams. So there's loads of people just wandering around the drop zone that have won nationals and 4-way, won nationals and 8-way, and have a wealth of knowledge and experience that they're very willing to pass on. So if you're ever unsure about how to do something, maybe it's one of the formations or one of the exits, there's usually lots of people around who are willing to help. On the other side of coaching, if you are already in a team and you're doing, maybe say you're around about the single A level, getting an FS coach rating, I found, was one of the best ways to progress your own flying and team skills, because you're jumping with people who are much lower experienced than you. The result is you have to anticipate what they're going to do and maybe correct it. You have to work hard to help fix their exits a lot of the time, and you'll really push your own fall rate skills and being able to stay with them. So FS coaching, while you're helping the students learn, I actually find you're really pushing your own skills as well. And for me, this was a way that I could keep on jumping. We'd spent a lot of money that year doing 100 jumps, 10 hours a tunnel, which for me was basically my full skydiving budget for the year. So the rest of my jumps were coaching, so I could continue to jump and progress my skills. I also did a lot of visualization. So just thinking about the dives, being able to think through the different formations really quickly, bring them into your mind faster than you can fly them, will let you push your skills and fly a lot faster than if you're in the sky having to stop and think about what the next point is. There's different ways of doing it. So Paul and the team had a bit more money, but a lot less time. So he didn't really have the time to go and do weekends worth of FS coaching, but he did enjoy going to the tunnel and splashing out on some one-on-one and two-on-two coaching. So with less time but more money, he was able to progress very quickly in the tunnel. Meanwhile, I was doing lots of coaching, lots of visualizing. We would then put that back together, and we found it was a really good balance for the team to have those different ways of everybody keeping going, despite having different budgets in terms of time and money. Some other benefits. So you make really great friends when you're doing teams, rather than just going out to the pub or whatever. If you're actually doing a team with your friends, it really helps with relationships. You learn a lot about each other, you get to know each other really well, and it's a great feeling to progress with your friends in teams. And it's also, I think, a really good way to improve your own personal flying skills. If in any other sport you try to practice maybe only a few minutes every second Saturday, like you would do if you just do a few skydives, maybe you go free flying a few times a month, it's not the same as going and actually doing some deliberate practice with a coach, repeating the same task or activity, exercise, and really working out what it is you need to do to improve. And those improvements will benefit you across all of your skydiving. So I think a lot of the big way events now, they're looking for 4-way skills and 8-way skills as part of the application process. If you can turn up to an event with a 4-way average, say 12, 13 average in AAA, that'll get you onto almost any big way event in the world. And for me as well, last year I did my AFF instructor rating. So the photo there on the right from my instructor course. And the skills I learned from being in a team were definitely helpful in passing that course to start with the examiners playing the part of dodgy students. And also just having the confidence now that I'm flying with real students that I'm going to be there, I'm going to be with them, and I can stay with them in the sky using the skills I've learned through my competition training. So lastly, I'm going to talk a little bit about canopy formation, something a bit different. There's been quite a big growth in canopy formations in the UK recently. And again, this was something that I sort of thought you could just do for fun. And it wasn't until a while later I realized there's also competitions in canopy formations. So we've got 2-way and 4-way are the standard disciplines. The start last year, I started a 2-way team with my friend Swanee, and we quite quickly were able to progress because we were able to apply all of the same tools and tricks that we'd learned to progress in formation skydiving now to canopy formations. So that process of getting a coach, training deliberately, reviewing all of our footage, working out what it was we needed to do to improve, but also understanding the rules and how the competitions work, meant that we were able to progress really quite quickly. We went through the rookie, the intermediate, and the senior category all in one season, and we'd kind of clocked that you can't shortcut canopy formations by going off to the wind tunnel and smashing 10 hours of tunnel over winter. The only way to do it and get better is by jumping. So we made a plan. We did 100 jumps last summer, and that was actually enough to get us a silver medal in canopy formations senior 2-way, and we got a silver in 4-way as well. But one of the reasons we'd really pushed for that was we'd noticed that in canopy formations, they send 2 teams to World Championships. So we've now qualified for the World Championships in 2024, so this year in Czech Republic and end of August. So we're looking forward to going to that. But it really shows that if you work hard in any of the disciplines, you can quickly progress to a stage where you can be representing your country in that discipline, which is a really fantastic experience in itself. So that's all I was going to talk about today. I've hopefully left some time for questions because I did have a few people send me questions before I even started. So yeah, hopefully that was interesting and perhaps inspirational.
That was brilliant. Thank you so much, Matt. That was really awesome. And thank you for including a picture of Chimera. Extra points to you for that. So if anyone's got any questions, feel free to pop them into the chat. I did ask people Facebook and Instagram to send them over in advance as well. So I do have a couple for you. And I've also got some of my own. So we'll work through some questions if that's cool. I will start with Gordon. So Gordon, hello. He's currently driving whilst watching this. So I assume he's got us on audio only. But he says, how hard is it to step up from 4-way to 8-way? Or how do I know that I'm ready for 8-way? Would you do one first and then the other? What would be a good place to do that, Matt?
Yeah, so I would definitely say 8-way is a lot harder. I've seen teams of people in 8-way with hundreds of jumps each get about a 1 average by the end of the competition, which could be a little bit demoralizing. I wouldn't say that the categories map very well either. So in 4-way, we have rookie, single A, double A, and triple A. In 8-way, we have rookie, intermediate, and senior. And you might think that if you're doing all right in rookie 4-way or single A 4-way, that you could then enter rookie 8-way and be similar. But I would say rookie 8-way is almost as hard as double A 4-way. You're kind of straight in at the deep end already. You need everybody to be capable of having matched fall rates. Otherwise, you're not really going to be able to build an 8-way. Once you've got that, though, I think the biggest thing, if you're starting out in 8-way, people are obsessed with launching the chunk. And while it's really, really good fun, if you're a beginner team, if you just launch a 4-way or even a completely unlinked exit, you're much more likely to build the first point and then maybe score 2 or 3 points per round. The teams that are scoring a 0 or a 1 average are usually spectacularly funneling a chunk 6 or 7 times in a row, and then they maybe score 4 points on the round where the exits work. So they end up with a really low average, but it's not necessarily reflective of how they were performing. It's just the exit.
I think they are quite different skill sets as well, aren't they? I know for me and my 4-way team, we then just did a fun version of 8-way, and we could only really get so far with it with our 4-way skills. There's definitely a lot of different styles of thinking, of engineering things, of kind of your individual moves might be slightly different. So I think you probably can do 4-way and 8-way in isolation from each other, even though the two will help each other as well. Would you agree?
Yeah, definitely. And I found as well you get to stage with 4-way where not only are you learning really specific block moves or formations, you're learning them really specifically with the people that you're flying with. So I had a sort of moment of realization a while ago, but I'd spent really quite a lot of money just learning how to spin Paul Wilcock round in a circle, which isn't necessarily a useful life skill, but it was helpful for that team. Obviously, there's transferable skills, but if you go into 8-way with only 4-way training, you don't have those specifics. You don't have the picture, the shapes, the just knowing how much space to leave between people. The 8-way formations can be quite long. Some of them are quite technical. I do suspect, Laura, if you guys had gone and done 10 jumps in 2 hours of tunnel, you would have been very strong. But coming in with nothing at all was always going to be tricky.
I blame the beers that we had the night before, to be honest, but it's all good fun. Cool, that's awesome. We've got a couple of other questions from Gordon. I think one of them is probably going to be relevant to a lot more people in the chat. So we've got a few people on that I can see who are newer skydivers. Maybe they've only recently got their FS1. And there's been quite a lot of chat recently at the drop zone about, oh, should we make a team? Who should we team up with? And that ties into Gordon's question. How would you go about forming a team? How do you choose your teammates?
So if it's just got your FS1, one consideration is definitely find people that are going to fall at similar speeds to you. If you do your first ever rookie team and you've got one person that's falling twice as fast as everybody else, you're going to make it really difficult. Even further down the line, if you're doing top teams, it's awkward if some people are having to wear 2 or 3 weight belts in the tunnel. So having good fall rate compatibility is important. But other than that, really just finding people with similar goals to you, similar interest in it. It can always be tricky if you've got one person in the team that wants to go and do 200 jumps and try and win AAA, and the rest of you just want to do 5 or 10 jumps and take it a bit more casually, that can be a little bit tense at times. So I'd say really just finding 4 people with the same goals. And if it's 8-way, it's a nightmare because you've got to find 8 people who are all available on the same days and all have similar goals. So yeah, really just finding people with the same goals as you, the same interests, maybe roughly the same skill level, but that can change. Like we took somebody into our team for the World Cup who had only ever done single A before, and just jumped straight into AAA from that point. And we'd all changed slots that year as well. So I say slot experience is almost like bottom of the list. Anyone can learn a new slot, but having people with similar goals and ideas of how they want to train is a really good way of doing it. And also just finding sort of compatible training people. So if somebody works every weekend and the rest of your team only works midweek, you might struggle to find times that you're going to be able to train together. So just finding compatible training schedules and similar lifestyles can be helpful as well.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. And Alex has just popped up in the chat saying the recently formed Langar Jump Buddy WhatsApp group, which is linked to from the Skydive Langar or the Langar Skydivers Facebook group. You can find it there. That's got an area for you to look for FS buddies as well, which is cool. I think something for us when we were putting our team together in Chimera as well was that we were quite fortunate that we were all friends first. And I reckon if you're hanging around the drop zone and there's a little bit of bad weather and you tend to hang out with certain people and enjoy spending time with them, that's probably a good place to look for your teammates as well, because you are inevitably going to have bad weather days. You're going to have like tricky situations, like being in a competition environment is really high pressure. It's much, much easier if you're with people that you get on with well as well.
Yeah, I ended up doing the opposite way because we made our team in the bar the night before the first competition, having never met before. And even further down the line, when Potter joined the team, I didn't really know him. So we agreed to go and do 10 hours of tunnel and go off to a World Cup together, having really just met. So I guess it was lucky that we ended up getting on.
Absolutely. You mentioned, just sticking on the kind of talking to newer jumpers for the time being, if that's all right. You mentioned early on in your presentation that you felt you lacked a bit of focus in your early jumps. If you were going to go back to your baby skydiver self and advise you on where you should put your focus, what would you say?
So it's interesting. A little more context on that was I was captain of the Strathclyde University Skydiving Club. And the deal that we used to get was once we brought a certain number of first-time skydivers to the drop zone, they would give us unlimited free skydives. So I had unlimited free jumps. And for anyone thinking about going to Langar and doing loads of jumps all day, every day, it wasn't quite the same because it was a weekend-only drop zone. So unlimited free jump doesn't quite, you wouldn't get through the volume, but it meant I was going every weekend and just jumping out of the plane and having a great time, but wasn't really even aware of the concept of getting better because I didn't have FS1. I sort of vaguely knew it had taken me more jumps to get my A license than some of my friends, but I hadn't really thought much about it. So I had no real concept of getting coaching or progressing. And yeah, if I'd got my FS1 a bit sooner and gone and got that coaching, then that would have, I think, been much better.
Cool. That's
To just
awesome.
get coaching, really.
Yeah, and that ties into my next question as well, that's just helpful. And that was going to be around tunnel. You mentioned how much tunnel you guys did as a team, and you also mentioned that you're doing the sky. How important is one versus the other for you?
I feel I should be careful with my answer wearing my Skydive Langar top. The tunnel is very important. I would say, I mean, if for our single A team, we did 4 hours of tunnel and 10 jumps. So the vast part of our budget went into the tunnel. I say top level competition, it's almost like you need to do the tunnel first to get the repetitions in, but then you need to transfer it to the sky. I think you see massive gains initially in the tunnel. So if you're a rookie team and you had some budget, if you went and did 2 or 3 hours of tunnel, that would do you way more advantage, I think, than going and do 10, 20 jumps because you've effectively done 120 jumps worth of training in the tunnel in that 2 hours. So to start with, I would say the tunnel, but you get to a stage where you then have to do the jumps, you have to get the exit. We had issues in double A that because we'd mostly learned in the tunnel, we were funneling half of our exits, we couldn't get off the plane. And then towards the end of the season, we finally started launching exits and we realized that our cameraman had no practice of filming exits because all he had practice of was filming us funneling out the sky. So suddenly we were catching the air and sailing away from the plane and he just had no experience of that yet. So we then ran into some issues with our cameraman. So we'd kind of caused that by maybe focusing a bit too much on the tunnel in our rookie and single A years. But while it was working and we had one exit that worked, it was in a very quick way to progress.
Do you make your plans for your teams 1 year at a time?
So with the 8-way team, microclimate always had a 2-year plan because you have to win nationals 1 year to then qualify for World Championships and then go and do that World Championships. So they would talk about an on year and an off year, but I mean, for scale, their off year was only 100 jumps and 10 hours a tunnel. That was their off year. So that was enough to win nationals usually. And then they would go and do 200 jumps and another 10, maybe 15 hours a tunnel, and an on year to go and try and be competitive on the world championship level. With 4-way, I think we tended to go 1 year at a time, but it wasn't really out of choice. I didn't really touch on this in my presentation, but every year I would say we lost the best person from our team. So at the end of our single A year, our best flyer left to go free flying. After double A, our best flyer quit the sport. We lost Potter from the team as well. So like every year we kept getting set back and having to build it up again. If we could have had the same 4 people from the start, all with the same commitment, the same goals, and just gone for it, I think that would have been better. I've always been jealous of Chimera maintaining a lineup for so long with like one change and however many years it's been.
Yeah, one change in 7 years. And we stole him back from you for the Wind Games. Apologies for that.
Oh, we thought if we took well that it would stop Chimera from beating us, but it kind of backfired.
Yeah, can't stop us. Let's talk about for the people on the webinar who are a bit more experienced then now. So I feel that formation skydiving in 4-way and 8-way is going through a bit of a change period. There's not the consistency in terms of the teams that we're seeing kind of aiming for the top of the podium this year, especially in 4-way with Chimera national champions not being there last year. Then we had Apex had James as like a stand-in, so they're not going to have a consistent lineup if they are back again. Then you've got microclimate, I assume not at nationals this year, so things are a little bit up in the air. What do you think will happen next? Where do you think the opportunities lie for people? Do you think we're going to see a change in the way people approach competition? Is it losing popularity? Like, how do you see the future of it panning out?
It's certainly a really good opportunity to get a 4-way or an 8-way team together this year. In theory, British Skydiving can invite 4 teams to the World Cup for 2025, and that will be based off the results of nationals this year. And as Laura just said, quite a few of the top 4-way teams have retired. So Chimera, I don't know if they're coming back this year. They didn't win games, but they weren't there last year. Eros fell apart just at the same time as people moving on to other things. And FTO they've won the World Championships now, so maybe they'll come back and keep going, or maybe now that they've done it, maybe they won't. So there's a bit of a gap at the top of 4-way. Last year it only took I think it was about 13, 14 average to get on the podium in 4-way, whereas for the last few years you've needed to be sort of 17, 18 average, which is substantially higher. That's a year's more training. So there's a really good chance this year if you put together a team in AAA that you just need a top 4 position, and then even if some of the teams above you are unable to go, they tend to invite maybe the team that came 5th and 6th until they've filled up those slots. And it's the same in 8-way. I don't actually think we've had 4 teams do 8-way nationals for a long time. So if you're able to put together an 8-way team, and the hardest part is finding 9 people that are going to be available to do it and train for it, in theory you could qualify for a World Cup. It's not necessarily automatic. British Skydiving could have a look at it and say, well, you've turned up and you only got like 1 point across 10 rounds. We're not going to send you and represent the country. But if you're like a genuine, serious trained team, then you'd have a fair shot at qualifying for a World Cup. And then once you're at the World Cup, it's a great experience. You're representing your country. You get to meet all the other teams. It's a really, really fun thing to do.
Tell us more about that, because you obviously for yourself, you went from having 1 point over 10 rounds, which I remember that year, you guys were trying so hard and struggling so much. And then when you got that 1 point, I remember everyone being like, yes, go Pumas. And then to go from that to being at a world meet in 8-way to being on the podium in 4-way, like, why was it that you wanted to compete? What was it about getting onto the podium or winning that appealed to you?
So for me personally, I used to do a lot of running. I got to the stage where I ran for Scotland and then had lots of problems with shin splints. And I'd always kind of wanted to represent Britain, but because of the shin injuries back when I was like 17, 18 years old, that kind of all went away. And one of my favorite events was the 4x100 meter relay. So I think when I then did four-way, it just brought back a lot of memories, and I was like, oh, this is just like competing in a four-way team again. It's just a different type of four-way team. So I think that's why it caught my attention. I was just addicted to it straight away. That sort of four-person competition again. But yeah, it was just really good fun. I like being good at things, and it felt like there was always something to work towards. I only did 100 jumps in my first 5 years as well. So when I came to Langar, there were people that had started skydiving when I was already captain of the uni club that were competing in double A and competing at quite a high standard. And I was like, wait a minute, how's this happened? I've got some catching up to do. So there was a bit of just really enjoying the competitive sport, and then also sort of noticing I'd maybe fallen behind a bit and wanted to catch up, and then went a bit far and just kept going.
And you'll be competing again this year, I assume.
Yeah, well, unfortunately for we'll be training and competing in canopy formations at the World Championships, so that'll be really cool. And I do have an 8-way team as well, hopefully for this year.
Oh,
We're just trying to
fantastic.
get 9 people together.
Which is very, very tricky, as we
Usual
know.
problem.
Tell us more about CF then, because you did touch on it very briefly at the end. Is that something that has replaced the FS side, or is it just something that's going to supplement it?
I have this idea that it would be cool to win all of the FS and CF competitions all in the same year. Um, it's a bit ambitious maybe, but it's very different training I found. So Swanee and I did CF by training midweek after work at Langar because it's very weather dependent. So we would just sort of look out the window and go, oh, it's sunny today. Should we meet at 3 o'clock? And we chipped away at it like that. Whereas with the 8-way, it tended to be we booked in these set weekends. So they complemented each other quite nicely. And I've always enjoyed the canopy side of things in skydiving a lot. And I kind of thought the only way you could compete in that was in swooping, which is sort of very far down the length, thousands and thousands of jumps before you're going to be good enough for that. But I discovered CF competition. I was like, oh, this is interesting. It's just the same as four-way FS. It's you have a dive pool, you have set points to get through in each round. You train it in a very similar way. You just go up and you can drill things, or you can do draws. The structure of the competitions is almost identical. With they've got GPs, Grand Prix instead of UKSLs, and they've got a nationals and they've got the World Championships as well. So yeah, I wouldn't say it's replaced it. I would like to do both. Unfortunately, I've got the clash this year with four-way and CF, but I don't think that'll happen every year.
That would be such a cool thing to achieve, though. I can't think of anyone who's been able to do that before. So definitely go for it. So we've only got a couple of minutes left, but for everyone who's watching, let's say that people are sat at home now, they've watched this and they've gone, yeah, I'm totally inspired. I want to go and compete in skydiving, and I want to do it in four-way or eight-way. What would be the steps that those people should take?
I'd say find yourself a four-way team. Find some people with maybe similar number of jumps or similar interests that want to go and do some four-way. Uh, Enter UKSL competitions, internationals, and you can get a bit of a training plan together. And even if it's just 10 jumps that you do together, you'll make massive improvements in those jumps. And then a really easy way to do an 8-way team is just find another four-way team of a similar level and put them together and do 8-way nationals as well. 8-way nationals is actually before four-way nationals this year, so you might need to be a bit more organised. It worked quite nicely when 8-way was the weekend afterwards. You could just grab a four-way team at the competition. But yeah, just have a go. Do some tunnel, do some jumps. You'll progress massively in your flying skills. You make a lot of good friends and have lots of fun doing it.
Much, much cheaper to do tunnel with a four-way than as individuals, as well as you've mentioned. Well, thank you
Even
so
cheaper
much.
is 8-way.
Even cheaper is 8-way, but you're going to have to start going abroad for that, and that's a whole different webinar. But thank you very much, Matt. Really, really appreciate you taking the time to give that for us. It has been recorded, so I will share that for everyone to watch back. And of course, Matt is at the drop zone all the time. If you can catch him on the ground, good luck, because he's usually in the sky. But if you can, have a chat with him. He can help you out. And good luck, everyone, with all of your competitions. Thank you very much, Matt. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Lauren.